All right, and we're live. Excited. Today's guest is Mark Knight, Senior Manager of Sales Development at Uber Freight. Mark's superpower is to turn cold outreach into real conversations and real conversations into revenue. He's a strong believer that great sales isn't about scripts, it's about structure, intent, making it easy to say yes. And if time permits, we might debate soccer teams, even though I've learned that the team he roots for just miserably beat the team that I root for, so maybe we'll just skip that part. But thanks a ton for coming on the show today.
Yeah, Francis, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about cold outreach.
Love it. So as always, we'll start with the confession. So time to confess, Mark. So everybody I think is struggling with outbound, and these days outbound is really something that everybody is talking about. You're an expert at this. Can you share a little bit of the struggle that you've seen in many different places? I think we always learn more from our problems and our errors and our mistakes than from our successes. So really curious to hear what is something that you've seen fundamentally broken in the outbound process?
Yeah, just that's a great question, Francis. As my time being a manager, we're going from SDR to manager to a senior manager, and just kind of going to some of the different organizations that I've gotten to work at. I've noticed three things that I think are holding some organizations back. And it's training, it's rigor, and it's accountability. And from a training perspective, I feel like we're struggling from being relevant coaching, making sure that we're bringing it personalized for that team, whether it's an SDR team or an AE team or an AM team, and making sure that you can pivot as a leader to have everything they need so they can be formidable when they're doing their outreach. Whether that's doing role playing, whether it's helping out with just cold calling, whether it's doing emailing, or it's doing social selling training. And I just haven't seen that enough. Or from a rigor standpoint, making sure that you're bringing that energy every day and the team is bringing that hustle culture as well to the company, because you need to have that every day. It's everyone thrives off positive energy, and you want to make sure that you're able to galvanize the team with that energy. And then the third thing is accountability and setting structure. So having those anchor days, meaning that, hey team, we're going to set a policy going into next month where it's going to be Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays be the days that we're all in the office. And that's where every week you're sending an SDR weekly inside or out email, illustrating where everyone's at, letting everyone know from where you're at from a statistics standpoint, and as well as the team standpoint, and then trainings for next week. And then making sure everyone's always ready for each and next day so that way they can be successful in their role.
Love that. Why do you think companies struggle so much with SDR training? Is it like just not the right people? Is it the structure isn't right? Like what doesn't work today?
I definitely feel like it's the structure and the training. Some trainings are like 3 weeks long, a month long. And, they really should be just 5 days, because what usually when happens when you get to an org is someone's drinking out of the bottom feeder for the first week, whether that's just doing paperwork and you're listening to a lot of videos. What you really want to do is a 5-day week training where it's all in office and they're getting everything they need. So that way going into the next week and the following week, you want to make sure that they have everything they need. So that way they are ready to go going into that second month ramp with that quota that they're going to be carrying.
That makes a ton of sense. Do you think how strong of a need is there for the person training the SDRs to have actually been on the field and have done cold calling and like outbounding? How important is that?
Yeah, I think it's extremely essential. It's also extremely essential for the manager to be able to pick up the phone and to be able to book a meeting. I really mean that. The manager should be able to roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty and picking up the phone and emailing. Just because we're leaders and we need to be able to practice what we preach. So everywhere I've gone, whether it was CHD Expert, whether it was Load Smart, whether it was Notified, and it's currently at Uber Freight, in my first 2 weeks, I was making phone calls and booking meetings. So that way I can understand what my team is going through for a daily basis. So that way when we're going to put trainings together, we're not just throwing stuff against the wall. We're understanding what we're doing. We're understanding what they're doing. and we're understanding the why of it, so that way we can help them be successful with the trainings that we're going to provide.
Love that. And I'm sure it creates a very different rapport as well when you see your manager banging the phone and actually like trying to work through the script and figuring out this part doesn't work or we don't have a good answer to that objection, rather than just someone who's like from their ivory tower yelling at you for not hitting your numbers.
Absolutely. And, and that's one thing that I've heard every kind of where I go, where it's, you guys need to make more calls. You need to make more emails. Okay, well, what about that, and what's the why behind it? Like, what tactically are we doing to get that one meeting? Maybe you don't need to make more calls. Maybe we need to actually go look at the prospect. Was this the correct persona? Are you calling into cell phones? No, you're calling into the office phone. Okay, why don't we change that up? Maybe it's just a slight A/B test where you just need to just change a little bit. I feel like we overanalyze, and we just need to be simplifying everything. One thing one of my old bosses used to say to me is Mark, you want to make sure everything is as simplified as possible, so that way everyone can go be successful. Other than that, they're just going to be spinning their wheels.
Love it. I know this was not necessarily prepared, but I'm curious to get your take. What is your opinion on SDRs reporting into marketing versus sales?
Yes, I would not necessarily agree with that. I've never heard of that, to be honest with you. They should always be rolling up to their SDR manager as well as their director, who's able to provide that feedback, whether it's, hey, what's your call connection rate? Or they want to know version rate is to an opportunity, or how many activities does it take me to get one meeting? So I necessarily wouldn't agree with that, because that SDR manager is also going to provide the competencies that they need to be successful to be in the SDR role and then go into that next role, which is that AE role.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, switching gears, a lot of the podcast is about AI, and I'm curious, like, how are you using AI in sales development today at Uber Freight?
Yeah. So right now we're really using AI to leverage, account research and to speed that up. One thing that I've noticed when I was working at Notified is that, my team was doing about 2.5 hours of account research a day. That's a lot of time. And, if you times that by 5 days, then you times it by 4, we're roughly going to be around 150 hours for the month of prospecting, which if we could give them like 20% of that time back, that would be incredible. So one thing that I've kind of stolen from somebody that I really admire is Kyle Coleman. When you come into a new organization, he talks about doing a 3-6-9, doing versus like a 30-60-90. Like, what are we doing? Get in there. So I took that mentality and I really ran with it. And, when I got in there, what if I noticed that they were doing like 4.2 meetings a month per SDR? So as we know, industry average is around 9. So we were doing about 10.7 after we were able to go in, uncover, and see how much time they were prospecting versus actually calling on the people that we needed to call on to get our meetings. So once we were able to reverse that, we saw so much success with us jumping from 4.2 to 10.7 in completed meetings booked. And that just translated to us hitting our quota for the year at 4 million, which was about 149% over our revenue, which was incredible.
That's awesome. And so what does that account research look like, and how are you using AI to automate that drudgery, I guess, out of the sales process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's hard to avoid SDRs wanting not to use ChatGPT, right? They all want to do it. It's quick, it's easy, it's seamless, versus going from Zoom Info back to Salesforce, back to LinkedIn, or jumping on Sales Navigator, or maybe if you're using Apollo or Sixth Sense. So you're climbing all over the place to all these different platforms. So what we're seeing was that a lot of the SDRs were just using our ChatGPT or Copilot. More times than not, they're using ChatGPT because they found the data was a little more successful versus the Copilot on Microsoft. So we went into the projects in ChatGPT and we helped design a create account plan. And basically what that says is there's 5 things that they're going to pull, which is, what does the prospect's company do? What are important industry trends? What are strategic priorities of the company? And then where is the company investing headcount? And with those 4 data points that we're able to pull, we found a lot of success when going to target, whether it's industry targeting or it's persona targeting, and going to try and book our meeting to get that opportunity.
Love that. You're essentially giving the reps a series of prompt or one prompt that helps them do that research. Who owns the kind of management of that prompt and refactoring it whenever we see new opportunities? Is that you? Is that someone from PMM? Is it like sales enablement? Is it the reps themselves? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's me going in and creating that prompt as well as with the SDR. So I want to get their input as well. Like I said, just because, um, you know, just because I'm the manager doesn't make me the be all and see all. I want to make sure that they have a voice and they're being heard because they're on the front lines just as much as I am, and they're even more on the front line making those calls and email. So I want to make sure that we're properly giving them the right account information, or they're pulling the right account information, so that way they're being formidable when they're on those phone calls and emails.
Love it. And I think there's something, again, interesting about having this be part of the team, right? Where like I assume in like team meetings, like a rep might mention, oh, I've actually tried modifying this in the prompt and I got this, which was super interesting. And that being part of the team, I think one of the challenges when this is owned by PMM or sales enablement is that they're a little bit further removed from the actual work of translating the output into like a call script or an account plan. So I think like keeping this in-house within the SDR team seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I try to involve enablement as much as we can too, so that way we're all kind of together aligned because they're helping out not just the SDRs, they're doing AEs and other folks as well as the AM. So I try to just to make sure everyone's aligned when we're either doing new projects or something cool like this, so that way AEs can go feed off of this because at the end of the day, SDRs are pipeline generators and they're elite at it. So and nowadays AEs are starting to jump on that wagon a bit. So and we're always happy to help educate and show them new cool ideas to go pull account information.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, jumping into the last question that I had for you, we love to talk about tools that help us either in our professional life or our personal life. And so I'm really curious, like, what's a tool that you swear by and you feel like nobody is really talking about or not talking enough about, at least?
Yeah. So one thing I have is pacing formula. And like any athlete, runner, lifter, if you're going to have something that's keeping track of your workouts, whether it's using your cell phone or your Apple Watch or whatever. I like to use an Excel sheet. I love Excel. I nerd out in it all the time. And I've built together a pacing formula that helps me keep track of my runs. So whether I'm doing a 3 or a 10K or getting up into a half and a full marathon, I'm keeping track of my times. That's either leading up to race day, doing all the training, so that way I can make sure I'm always where I need to be and I'm not pushing the limit, because when you're doing a lot of running, you can get injured. And I tie that into being SDR because you can do too much prospecting where that leads to for you not doing too much activity and to where you're not then getting meetings, or it's the vice versa. We're not doing enough prospecting and we're just calling on the wrong persona and we're not getting enough meetings. There's so many rabbit holes we can go down. So I've been working so hard and together an SDR pacing formula for the SDR team to where an SDR walks in and they're able to know how much activity they need to do for that day to get an opportunity. Because now we're into 2025 where I feel like every team should have this, whether it's just for a rep or it's for a whole team. So what do I mean by that is in an Excel sheet, you're going to have 3 columns. One column will be your data input. One column will be your insight and per rep and team-based input. And then on the third column, you're going to have where it says your competencies. But what's basically you're going to have is on the far left in your data input, you're going to have your conversion metrics, and then you're going to have your forecasting metrics. So those will be your data inputs that you input. Now, hopefully you're able to use a link and then you can upload it with your Salesforce, so that way you're not having to do it manually, because that could be a pain in the butt. So once you have that data, you're able to go in and see what it takes to hit quota from how many calls, emails, connects for that day from what you need to hit your pipeline quota, how many calls, emails, connects you need to get one qualified opportunity, and then how many stage two it takes to get a close one opportunity. Because if an SDR is able to see this every day versus kind of walk in and be like, okay, my boss told me to make 50 calls today and 30 emails, but I'm not entirely sure what I need to do to get hit my goal today. Some SDRs will come in, they'll hit their goal in the morning, and then the prospects will rest for the day. But that could be for that day, and then the rest of the week they don't get a meeting. So why can't we tee people up where they're versus going, hey, I got 3 meetings this week, 0 this week, 1 next week, 3 the next week. As managers, we need to come in a little bit more, and we need to be providing this data to where they can come in every day, see what they need to do from an activity perspective to go hit their goals.
Love it. I think it's super interesting. I love the analogy with running, because there's also something about when you're preparing for a marathon or anything like that, you can't just be every day running a marathon or just every day sprinting, right? There's a mix that you have to put in place, and that mix is actually slightly different for every single person, and you can see in your data if something is working or not working. So I really like the idea of tracking all of this, not just for the standpoint of the rep being able to see how they're performing towards their objective, but also as a manager to be able to come in and say, oh, like I see that you're like deviating a little bit from like the trajectory that would lead you to the goal on maybe your conversion rate on the phone is not there. So maybe we should actually work a little bit on the script to figure out like what's going on, identify where one person might be deviating from the group, and being able to put together maybe a more personalized plan.
Absolutely. And having that personalized plan and a team metric plan, obviously the personalized plan is going to be even more sweeter because the SDRs are like, oh, this is for me. And that's what we want to provide. Because sales is tough. Being an SDR is one of the hardest roles there is in the department. So if we can make their job a little bit more easier because they're getting no's all day and told to go away and never call me again, and this right here providing what they need to be able to walk in and see what type of activity they need to hit their goals, I think is everything for an SDR, especially going into 2025 and moving into 2026. It's going to be even more relevant.
Yeah. I mean, it's only going to get harder as a lot of the other channels are getting saturated, and this is the only way to get in front of prospects.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thanks a ton for joining and for sharing a ton of insights today. If people want to get in touch with you or have follow-up questions, like what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, they can shoot me an email, mark.knight@uberfreight.com, or they're welcome to ping me on LinkedIn. I'll get back to them as soon as I can, and I look forward to receiving any messages that I get.
Awesome. Well, thanks again a ton, and stay tuned for the next episode. All right.
Appreciate you, Francis. Thank you.